And welcome back to Newsday. It was an atmosphere for presidential recognition on Wednesday when President Bola Tinubu received the report of the high-powered Presidential Committee on Nigeria's Extended Continental Shelf Project. The team was made up of Professor Larry Awoshika, a marine scientist and a member of the committee surveyor, Aliyu Omar, had worked for a number of years to advance the project, which aimed at extending Nigeria's maritime boundaries in accordance with the 1982 United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. By the United Nations approval, Nigeria's continental shelf has been provisionally extended by more than 200 nautical miles, which is about 5 times the size of Lagos State. For what this accomplishment represents for Nigeria, the prospects and challenges, we're now being joined by maritime lawyer Dr. Emeka Akabogu. Many thanks for joining us this afternoon on Newsday.
Thank you very much for having me.
So for those who might not be as well versed in marine biology or in just exactly what is going on, can you tell us what this extension does for Nigeria and the challenges it might pose as well?
Okay, thank you very much. I think the first question is, what exactly is the continental shelf? So Nigeria is a coastal state, and we are above the oceans. So the continental shelf really is, essentially, in the barest possible terms, is the landward extension of the mass of a country into the sea.
Right.
So it's the extremities of the continent. All the continents are above the oceans, and the extremities of the continents extend into the sea. And in some cases, some parts of the continents, maybe many millennia ago, where some parts of the sea many years ago were actually physical land. So the continental shelf is that part of the landward area that goes into the sea up to a certain point. So what happens is, I think understanding this is within the context of the legal framework of where does the national territory of Nigeria start and end. So the national territory of Nigeria, as far as we can see, ends at our seaward boundaries. But in actual fact, it doesn't end there. Our territories, we have waterways over which we exercise sovereignty. And these waterways are known as the territorial waters. And in Nigerian law, the territorial waters over which the country can exercise sovereignty is up to a distance of about 12 nautical miles. However, there is an additional 200 nautical miles over which the country may exercise commercial right of exploitation, which is the exclusive economic zone. Now, and within that exclusive economic zone, the country exercises commercial rights, not sovereign rights, okay? Which means that it's still available for other countries to exercise rights of passage and the like, but other countries cannot exercise commercial rights in these areas. However, the continental shelf is part of your land. The continental shelf extends all the way up to 200 nautical miles. So within that area, the country is able to exercise, again, sovereign rights over the seabed. Which means not necessarily fishing, but drilling and related activities that relate to and are sourced from the seabed. So what Nigeria has done is that Nigeria has taken advantage of a provision in the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, which entitles sovereign countries that are coastal countries to apply to the Commission on the Limits of the continental shelf to have that continental shelf area extended. And that's where, and that application can be made where you feel that your continental shelf actually extends beyond the 200 nautical miles. So that's what Nigeria has done. And Nigeria has been granted the approval. Of course, it's a very elaborate process because you need to prove scientifically that indeed your continental shelf extends beyond the allowed 200 nautical miles. So Nigeria started this process in 2009, but this had to be proved and approved by the Commission, by the International Commission for Nigeria to be granted this extension.
Well, thank you very much for this very detailed explanation. But I'm sure the average Nigerian, will be wondering what's the significance, of this extension? What benefits can we expect to enjoy from this extension?
Primarily economic benefits. So automatically, the area over which we've been granted additional control, sovereign control, is an area within which we can potentially explore for minerals, mineral resources, energy, and aquatic resources. However, the aquatic resources have to be aquatic resources that are of a sedentary nature, which is you can explore non-living mineral resources which are on the seabed or under the seabed, not in the water. So fishing relates to living resources that are not on the seabed. So fishing is not included. However, there are some kinds of fish and there's some kinds of living organisms in the sea which are attached to the seabed. Those ones you can explore. So primarily, if we wanted to explore for, and just like we have deposits of gold, lithium, titanium, all on land, you have them extending into the seas. So we are able to explore all these resources, in addition, of course, to the more common energy resources that we're familiar with, and do other kinds of research and other activities of a sovereign nature which attach to the seabed.
I'm sure there's a lot of scientific research that goes into making sure that this deal goes through. Is it also for commercial purposes such as real estate? That's where my mind goes to, first of all. That's the first question. And more of how it benefits the average Nigerian. Is this something we should be prioritizing? Is it heavy on the priority list in terms of what is going on within the country? And it just seems quite, it seems quite intricate and different, so. Most of the time, what you can't see, you can't understand. But I think, yes, it should be prioritized. Because as I said, it boils down to economic benefits. So, as of today, we have our hydrocarbon resources, for instance, our proven hydrocarbon resources are finite. And we do know that hydrocarbon energy remains an important energy source for the world. So, we don't lose anything by further exploring in areas yet unexplored for energy resources. What about the real estate angle?
Now, real estate is an interesting angle. Not many people have thought about that. But indeed, yes, there's a possibility there. Because artificial islands could be created. In fact, quite a number of countries do explore that option. Artificial islands. So if we do want, we could create artificial islands in the areas because artificial islands have to go all the way down to the seabed. So we do have that right and can do that. In fact, many of the oil exploration companies do indeed do that in the course of developing their oil installations and support infrastructure around those locations. But yes, certainly artificial islands could be created, which is in line with the real estate you're talking about. So I think it is not as distant. The benefits are not as distant as it would readily appear. The president created the Ministry of Marine and Blue Economy recently, and I think it is consistent with the creation of that ministry that this new approval syncs with. Because what it does is that you can have specialist-focused review and exploration of what those opportunities are, But of course, you need to have a framework which ensures that you're able to appropriate these resources.
So how soon, can we begin to benefit from this extension? Is it immediate, or are there more processes to follow, following the UN's approval, of course?
My understanding from the committee's report is that we could take advantage of the approval which has been given right now and run with it, by which we now simply refer back to United Nations for a process for final approvals and for the country to start exercising those benefits. Or we could still, if we feel that we have the data, even pitch for the further extension of the area over which we've been given control. I said initially that we have, as a default, 200 nautical miles area over which we exercise sovereign control. I think this latest approval adds an additional about 20 or so nautical miles to what we already have across that area of the coastline. But we do potentially have up to 150 nautical miles. My thinking is that we should take what we have, start working with it, get all the approvals, seal it before we start the next round, because this particular round has been on since 2009. And in line with your question, begin to appropriate value from what we already have. Because the truth is, we have barely scratched the surface, even within the traditional 200 nautical miles which we have. And it is quite a significant area. So brass tacks, what needs to be done? We need to create a legal framework that optimizes the appropriation of these resources. We don't have that legal framework up to scratch yet. That's the first step. And once we do that, then it opens the opportunity for the relevant investors, whether in real estate, as you've suggested, or in mining, as could happen, or in other areas, to begin to now put their money down to eventually translate to economic benefits for the country.
Well, we certainly learned a thing or two today. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Emeka Akabogu.
Thank you very much for having me.